Okay, welcome to a class on money vocabulary. We're going to start with shell money out on something, and you can just shell out on something, and it's exactly the same as fork out on something, which I know you all remember means pay for something reluctantly. You usually fork out on your taxes or shell out on your taxes because nobody enjoys paying for their paying their taxes. Everybody finds it an unpleasant process. So you do it reluctantly. When you splash out on something, you do it with pleasure. You still spend a lot of money, just like fork out on and shell out on, but you do it with pleasure. So you might splash out on a holiday, but you shell out on perhaps your kids go to a private school and you shell out money on their education. That's possible. It's very expensive sending them to a private school. So of course you will be shelling out on their education then, certainly thousands maybe. So we've got those three. I want you to remember shell out on just like fork out on, and remember cough up as well, because cough up means pay reluctantly. You just don't say cough up on something. You don't tell me the something, you just say I coughed up £50 or something like that. So it is grammatically different, but it certainly means pay reluctantly, just like fork out on and shell out on. Now, if you put money aside or put money by or set money aside or set money by, all four of those phrasal verbs mean to excuse me, all four of those phrasal verbs mean to save money, to put money to one side until you need it. So maybe you need some money next week. Maybe you are, I don't know, maybe you are going on holiday next week. And so you put aside a few £100s to make sure you've got some money for when you go abroad. Yeah, but you can also say I put some money aside for a rainy day. Certainly that works very well, and all of these work with for a rainy day. But you can also say I put £500 aside for my trip to the Bahamas. Yeah, so you can put money aside for something, for a trip. And this is very similar to I am saving up lots of money for my trip to the Bahamas. So save up means accumulate money so that you have it saved for a future event. Yeah, and save up for something, just like put money aside for something. Yeah, they work, they function very differently, very similarly sometimes, and I think these ones do. They both use the for to tell you why you're saving up money. Okay, prices now. We're going to do a lot on describing price movements, because I know a lot of the time you need to do this in your exams, and a lot of the time when you're reading financial press or economics or something like that, you're reading this kind of descriptions of price movements. So you can increase, rise, fall, decrease from £100 to £50. Yeah, the price of gold can increase from $1,000 an ounce to $1,500 an ounce. Yeah, and you can also say there has been an increase from $1,000 to $1,500 an ounce. So you can do it with the noun, a rise, a fall, an increase, a decrease from X to Y, or the verb, it has increased from X to Y. It has risen from $1,000 to $1,500. Okay. Now, with the verb, you can also say by X when you want to say how much it's risen. So we just had the example of from $1,000 to $1,500 per ounce. Well, you can also say the price of gold has increased by $500. Yeah, that works as well. The price of gold has increased by $500 over the last 6 months. Yeah, over the last 6 months, or over the last 3 months, or over the last year, over the last 12-month period. So use over to describe the period of time. Now, even though we can say an increase from X to Y, we can't say an increase by X. No. We have to say an increase of X. So we say the price has increased by $500 over 6 months, or there has been an increase of $500 over 6 months. Okay, so remember the prepositions, guys. Remember the prepositions, because they're so important and they're so difficult. If it's the noun, we can say of X, but if it's the verb, we say by X. both the noun and the verb work with from X to Y. An increase from X to Y to increase from X to Y, okay? Now, remember, you can also say a peak of $500, yeah? So the price of gold reached a peak of $1,500. So a peak of, if it's a peak of $500, yeah? And that wouldn't be over a period of time, because that's just saying the price of gold in January hit a peak of $1,500. But the opposite of a peak of is a low point of. So if the price is bottoming, yeah, or bottoming out, we say bottoming or bottoming out for when the price of something is at the very lowest level, then we say a low point of X, yeah? So we say the price of gold reached a low point of $200 probably about 20 years ago. Okay, at the moment it's going very, very high because governments around the world are printing money, and that means that all of our money is diluted. The value of it, the value of your money and my money is being diluted right now by people in our governments. Okay, so we can also describe price with the price stands at, yeah? And I want you to look at all of this, because we said a peak of $1,500, but when we use peak as a verb, to peak, then we use the preposition at. So notice that we use different prepositions when it's a noun or when it's a verb. It's the same word, peak, but when it's a peak, it's a peak of. When it's to peak, you say the price peaked at $1,500, yeah? Or the price peaked at $2,000 an ounce this year, maybe. But you can say in January, the price stood at. We use the verb stand, yeah? Stand for when you're describing a price. So the price stood at, I don't know, $1,500. It peaked at $1,500. It bottomed out, and you don't have to include the out. You can if you want to. It's optional. It bottomed out at $200 about 20 years ago. And if you want to say that the price remained constant for a long period of time, you say the price leveled out at. In fact, it did happen with the gold market. I think the price leveled out at about $1,800 an ounce for a very, very long time. Now, if the price of gold drops, then you say the price of gold dropped to $900 an ounce, or it rose to $1,800 an ounce, or it increased to $1,800 an ounce, it decreased to. So remember that preposition for when you're describing what the price reached, what amount.